Greeting club members. Welcome to the third podcast of the year. This is part of the Latitude 45.4 newsletter. My name is Patrick Flaherty. Today I'm going to interview Commodore Jacques Boucher, who is nearing the close of his 2 years in office, 2 tumultuous years, and we want to ask him to reflect on that period. Welcome, Commodore Boucher.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for doing this.
Okay, my pleasure. Commodore, to start with, would you perhaps tell us about your personal history with the club, how you joined, etc.?
Sure. My first acquaintance with the club was in 1967. My father was an engineer and had interest in boats. In Three Rivers, he had a 18-foot motorboat, which we used quite a bit, and moved to Beaconsfield in 1960, and he would motor on the lake here, and I would drive the boats while he would water ski. And he had cancer at the age of 41, and it was quite a serious operation, and he made it through. And a friend of his here, Pat Bowl-Evans, had a CNC Corvette and took Dad sailing, and it was like a shot in the arm. Dad was hooked, as most people are that try sailing. Anyways, there was a Red Wing 30 that was up for sale. It was next to Commodore George Hamilton's boat. It was actually a fellow family called Jackson. Mr. and Mrs. Jackson was selling the boat and liked our family. There was 4 kids, my dad and my mother, and we bought this Red Wing 30. And Dad stayed as a member for about 10 years to 1977, where I was exposed to the club. We raced the boat, and we had lots of fun. And then in 1980, I rejoined the club with my friend Jerry Wood, and I shared a Lightning sailboat with Jerry and Brian Wilkinson, who's now part of the executive. And we had fun doing that together. And then I met somewhat my mentor in sailing, a fellow called Gilles Mercier, whose name is on the club championship board. And I sailed with Gilles on Lightnings and on J24s, and successful campaigns. You know, we'd win just many club championships around the lake, and that's Lake of Two Mountains also. And I've been a member since then, since 1980, so I'm in my 41st year as a member here. I'm married in 1987, 3 kids, had an active career in the securities brokerage business, mostly as a trader in a trading room. So some years I didn't use the boat much, but I've always kept it up, and I retired 6 years ago in 2015. I've been using the sailboat that is, frequently. And I recently, last summer, bought a motorboat, and I'm very happy to still be a member. Of course, upon retirement, after having spent 4 years as the junior squadron director, I guess it stayed in the mind of the nomination committee, and I was asked to join as secretary. And a year later, I was asked to take over as vice commodore, and here I am today at the end of my term.
Excellent. Thanks, Commodore. Moving up to now the past 2 years, what would you say has been your greatest challenge in that 2 years as Commodore?
Well, Patrick, it's evident that the COVID-19 pandemic was the event that affected, and if I can use that term, my commodoreship. Things started fairly well. My intent was to be quite strict with expenditures around the club, and we had a retreat in that early December, and I knew that I wanted to focus on the harbor, because to me, there's no yacht club without the harbor, and we decide to build docks. And, it's fairly quiet, but you make plans for the season to come. And then March comes along. We had been on a sailing trip to the Grenadines with the kids and all that. And I came back, and everything started shutting down with the COVID-19. There were rumors of things in China at that point. As society realized the severity of this pandemic, we were having our regular meetings, and soon realized the gloom that had set on society, and particularly on what concerns us, the boating industry. There were moments where we thought we wouldn't open that summer. Thanks to a dynamic executive, and I'll come back to it, but particularly our honorary secretary, we managed to devise or organize procedures to deal with COVID-19 inside the yacht club. And, walking the docks, protecting other members, haul out, tennis court, pool procedures. And they were good enough that the society that was advising the government, Voile Québec, as well as Alliance Nautique, took our policies and distributed them to other yacht clubs across the province. You, Commodore Flaherty, yourself told me about the Yacht Club of Quebec that you visited just this summer, I think, who acknowledged, our share. Commodores from Hudson, managers from Point Claire, and I think even yacht clubs across the country may have called our manager, acknowledges such. Lo and behold, our procedures were so good that the government was convinced, and I don't say it's the Royal St. Lawrence, I say it's Voile Québec, and we opened up at least a week before marinas. But, it was so dark at one point, Honorary Secretary Osterman looked at each other, and we were really wondering whether we had a season. Well, we did have a season, albeit with much restraint. What we could do with services here. The dining room was closed. The squadron, for the first time since the late 40s, I think it was founded in 1947, 48.
47, 49, somewhere in there, yeah.
By Commodore George Hamilton, if I recall. And for the first time we closed it. And so definitely COVID-19 persisted throughout 2020 and now 2021 to affect our procedures and our way of doing. As my term closes out, we can see, and we heard the government the other day, that expects to relieve us from sanitary conditions in early January. So perhaps we'll have a very normal year next year. But definitely, Patrick, I know my answers are long. But
No, but during in the initial days there, the gloomy days, where you didn't know what was coming at us, did you have a chance to run any scenarios, like if we had to shut down and not operate for the year, what that might look like? Or did things move fast enough that you never had to actually make a scenario in that regard?
Yeah, I think the second hypothesis that you submit is the one. We never really wanted to admit or to think that we would close it. And it was early enough. I'll remind you that all this was happening late March, early April, that there was always a glimmer of hope that things would happen. And as a matter of fact, the darkest days were about 3-4 days before we got the go-ahead from the government, des autorités de la santé of the government of Quebec. And then things started opening up and we were allowed to go ahead. Applying, if you recall, we ordered the launching of the boats. People had to wear masks and keep their distances, and anyways, so on. We've heard so much about it, I won't repeat myself here.
Just to mention, all the regulations you referred to were prepared by the Honorary Secretary. It's Mark Osterman.
Yes, yep. Mark Osterman, and he was a champion in that. The other people that participated in that were Margot McFarlane, and Robert Perrault, and Rear Commodore Pierre Farmer. And they did a terrific job, really.
As you mentioned, it was actually last year in 2020, in July, I was in Yacht Club de Quebec. It was strange, they were accepting visitors. We weren't. The general manager on his own brought it up, said, what you guys did, we just used all that. It was available at Voile Quebec, and suddenly we said, we don't have to do it. It's all done here.
Yeah.
All documented. No. This one.
So I'd add to that, too, that the Royal St. Lawrence profile was increased across the province at that point, because, of course, our name was on this documentation. And it did much for our reputation. I assisted the meetings of the FVQ, and I remember somebody asking Jacques, what's this CY, so on, the acronym that you're using here? I said, Club de Yacht Royal Saint Laurent. She said, we're not accustomed to you speaking French and being there too. And that helped, I think, quite a bit.
Commodore, a lot has happened in the club the past 2 years. You're referring to the effect of the COVID. But during that period and your response to it and everything, what are you proudest about during the 2 years near the end of your time as Commodore. Just reflecting back, what's your proudest moment?
Listen, we have great personnel at this club, and this action was done during Commodore Jacques, at the end of his term. He decided that we needed to change the management level here, and I was tasked with finding a new general manager. And we found this young man, Florent Tussin, came about. Louise Prou and I interviewed him, and there was a passion in the young man that we couldn't pass over. And we hired Florent Tussin. And we're very satisfied with the work he's done so far. So that's a key moment, finding the right person. And Florent is with the Canadian Society of Club Managers. Most of the big yacht clubs, Royal Canadian, Royal Vancouver, Hudson, are members of this association. And these people teach the people, their members, how to run yacht clubs, how to give value to members for the dues that they are paying. And definitely, that was a very big plus. Other events, I think we're Commodore Louise Prou and Director of the Harbor, Mr. Robert Perrault, did a great job in finally bringing on the extension of the Hines project, which gave us 22 new spots. It also gave us a new way of looking at docks. When I started, and I alluded to that at our first retreat, we had decided we were going to make docks, and the new procedure was with galvanized steel docks, and we did that. However, we discovered that for the price we were making them, we could probably buy some already made or made to our dimensions that we needed. And so we bought extra docks, but we bought these 22 docks, dimensions we wanted at the end of Hines, and lo and behold, the payback was fairly quick, 1.5 to 2 years, and then that's money that came in. We also got 22 boats and the revenues, the dues that come with that. So it's helped the top line of the budget process.
One area I would like you to touch on, Commodore, is I think all the members have noticed an awful lot of repairs that have gone on all through last winter, inside the club, outside the club. You know, the balcony, for instance, a lot of just repairs to the flooring and this kind of stuff. The seawall of the club was repaired. Many things like that. How did that come about at a time when I should think budget-wise things were tight?
Well, it's no secret to anybody that the grants offered by the federal government, in lieu of closing down our sailing or instructional sailing operation in 2020, our dining room in 2020, is all money that benefited the club. There would have been no Hines extension without that money. And it allowed us to beef up, if I can use that expression, the personnel working for us. So we had more staff than we usually do, and I think a more efficient usage of them. And if I can expand on it a little bit, the first year I looked at the budget like that, I made sure that the manager proposed the budget, revised by the honorary treasurer. And if I can mention here Robert Desforges, who did a great job, another very good advisor, and a man who simplified the understanding to me and others of the finances of the club. But I'll come back to the manager devising the budget. He devised the budget, of course, to balance. And Commodore Flaherty, how we function here. It's a zero result. So he planned, he got to know the different expense and profit centers of the club and budgeted to be able to move around without in half pockets. And that's where the efficiency comes in, Could save here, I can take the money and have them repair the seawall like that. Can save there and work, as they did last fall, on the balcony. The ceiling of the balcony where you saw rust before, it was cleaned up, repainted. The reason we had rust is that there was a leak around the edges of that steel parameter and cement slab on the balcony. A membrane was put on there. A new rug was installed. We worked on the covering, the awning on top of the balcony. Then we came inside the yacht club. This year in particularly, new chef, new refrigeration system. We changed the washrooms around facing the dining room on the second floor, updated the washrooms, updated the plumbing, And those are things that come to mind at this point, but many other, there's a garage behind the pool, all that was cleaned up, but that garage was used by one of our employees, Jean Lalonde, to work on the Opti fleet last year, to work on club boats, which were updated like that. All the Optis were done, the club boats. And those are examples of the kind of work that a manager, a budget that he constructs, that he can move around with, and an efficient use of the personnel that you have. Instead of going outside, they capitalize on each employee's ability.
Great. Commodore, what would you say to people interested in joining the club? Why join Royal St. Lawrence?
Patrick, the first thing that comes to mind here is our tennis group under executive member Louise DeVaux. That community of tennis players come from all sectors of the club: motorboaters, sailors, racers, both genders, all age groups. And, it's a real model of the community I'd like to see around the yacht club, where people mix and get to know each other. I talked about perhaps next year having bigger gatherings. The whole idea of that is for members to know each other, increase the networking at the club and the interaction amongst them. I would say to prospective members, especially in the context where our harbor is full at this point, it's difficult to bring in new boats at this point, social members. And social members could come and enjoy fine dining. They can enjoy the tennis. They can enjoy the pool, the yards, participate, and as the community grows, members who have boats can take out members who don't have boats. That will help the racing format. And that's what I would tell prospective members right now. Join for the community at the club. Another decision in terms of personnel this year was the chef. We hired the young Benjamin Cooper, who, after 1 year, I would say, is quite a success, judging by the attendance. And I look even today as we speak, and downstairs there are 7 or 8 tables, it's a beautiful day, that are being used. This is late October. Sundays have been filled. I remember Sundays in October, I would come to the yacht club 3-4 years ago, and there was hardly anybody here. Think back of the evenings we've had this summer, and here I want to bring about entertainment director Brigitte Lamoureux, who brought entertainment on the Friday nights, and that was a very big success. Attendance, unfortunately because of COVID, we could only accept 80 reservations. But if things open up next year, we could have 100, 150 people on Friday nights, and we can do it for more than one night. Anything's possible. So I would think those are elements. There's many others. Brian Wilkinson did an extraordinary job in instructional sailing. 2 years ago, I don't know if you recall, but at General Assembly, we brought together instructional junior sailing, instructional adult sailing, and the race teams together, and that's a very big portfolio today. He put all that together, wrote manuals, brought in a third-party adult sailing group, Advantage Boating, who started teaching here and certified according to Sail Canada. He also got rid of many boats that were lingering in our parking lots, that were unused and abandoned. Incoming Rear Commodore Kim Fata and the membership committee. Kim was here every day interviewing prospective men, working hand in hand with David Fleet to find spots in the harbor with new members like that. A tremendous job, which today sees us with close to 70 new Senior 35 members in the past 2 years. Other categories have dropped by, but the Senior 35 has increased quite a bit. And I tell you, the energy that incoming Rear Commodore Fata has displayed is good for our future. Absolutely. Who else? Michel Larocque. Cruising, was limited in 2020 and perhaps so at the beginning of 2021. If you remember, locks were closed. But Michel, this year, with his company, went and picked up the new docks. And he will be the chair of the entertainment committee. I attended the cruising party just a few weeks ago, and terrific. So that augurs well for the future. How could I not speak about the communications committee headed by Gary, and before him Louise Bergeron. It's a huge portfolio with the advent of technology nowadays, and we still have lots of work to do on that. And look, podcasts. Who would have thought of podcasts, a year ago? And hats off to Norm Pearl, who was with us today and coordinating all this recording. I'd also like to tip my hat to Danielle Delaney and her marketing efforts. We've been very present on Facebook and this year on Instagram, and she's brought in a cohort of hers, Sébastien Voyer, who's been posting many things for the yacht club, and that also looks good for the future. And Samantha Lazier, who's going to take on the instructional sailing portfolio at the pool, and who dealt with the restrictions. Canteen over there. Philippe Boulanger with the buildings and ground, who was essential and recommended, investing on what we did in the lawn there with the fire pits, the new furniture, and complemented the efforts done by Brigitte and her entertainment committee. Margot Hall, who I said before worked on the COVID-19 procedures, but was the house chairman and was essential in helping us find a new chef, Antoine Pacarat. It's been difficult, but young Antoine has got much of interest. He's raced with everybody at the club, raced with me, and the energy he has on that also is important for the future of the club with the younger members. Scott Morgan brought back the club championship at the yacht club. We've had 2 club champions, Peter Hall last year, and this year Jamie Allen. Also the new laser program, similar to what the Shark program, to encourage young sailors to come out on the most popular boat in the world. Patrick, I've also got to mention my fleet captain, who was a phenomenal advisor, who I could speak to about, not only affairs of the club, but, my thoughts. It's not always easy handling volunteers. Volunteers, you take what they can give you, and they don't work with a stick and a carrot. Susan Ormonjo is, of course, the fleet captain I'm talking about, and who did such a great job with the 2 sail pasts that we had like that. It was fun being part of the organization. It was also lots of fun touring the harbor with her and Jean-Pierre, her husband, who drove the boat that had us, and then we were followed by the saxophone players in the
that
other
was
boat.
terrific.
Like that.
The saxophone player was really cool.
Yeah, it was lots of fun. You know how much I like music, Patrick, and I play music, and if there's a signature I like to remember by, it's those moments, at the sail pass. So a tip to a terrific executive that really helped my steering of the business
Thank you,
at the club.
Commodore.
You're welcome.
That concludes our podcast. Thank you all for listening.